Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. We are joined by David Boudia, who needs no introduction. This is a weighty topic, but one of the most important ones that I could ever think of in terms of mental health, elite athletes. And David played a role, and I just happened to kind of like what a lot of us have been doing in the pandemic. Somehow I missed this, but the HBO documentary, The Weight of Gold. And David plays a very prominent role in this documentary that was given by Michael Phelps, and also he did a lot of the part of this. Let's start that over. Jeez, I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut that.
You're good.
What is the word I'm looking for? He narrated it. Okay, I'll write that down. Let's try this again. Sorry about that. And we're not gonna do. We won't do that again. But all right. Let's cut. This is Alan Karpik, segment 3 of Gold and Black Live with David Boudia, a person that needs no introduction, not only to the Purdue sports world, but to the world of not only diving, but Olympic athletes. And David, thank you so much for taking the time to join our show today. Very much appreciate that.
Hey, my pleasure, Alan. Thanks for bringing up this weighty topic.
Yeah, it is that, and we'd love to talk to David about his unbelievable exploits in diving and what he's meant with his Olympic gold medals. But I think this is a topic that is transcends that, or it becomes even more important because of where David has been. And we're making reference to a documentary that David was a participant in called The Weight of Gold on HBO. Like many folks during the pandemic, I've been able to see a lot of documentaries and ran into this one. I don't know how I missed it in the first place. It came out in July and was narrated by Michael Phelps, of course, the celebrated swimmer, multi gold medal winner. And David, you obviously deal with a very sensitive mental health topic. You tell your own story, but tell us a little bit about how all this came together, because it's a group of gold medal athletes or elite Olympic athletes that are sharing a very common experience.
Yeah. So it was about, goodness, what year is this? 2021. It was 2019 when I was introduced to a gentleman who was part of helping putting this documentary together with Michael Phelps. And obviously the major thing that Michael wanted to get out of this was to introduce the fact that elite athletes, just like everybody else, struggle. And so we struggle in the pool or certain arenas in different ways, but I don't think there's a person that has gone through depression that it's common. So whether you're in the office and you're not enjoying what you're doing and you immediately get depressed, or you're trying to pursue this huge outlandish dream like become an Olympic gold medalist, depression doesn't discriminate. And so I knew that with his story and multiple other Olympic athletes, I wanted to be part of this to kind of share with the world that this is quite common in elite athletics.
Yeah, and without a spoiler alert, but your story is quite personal, and it may surprise some people, because we see the David Boudia with an unbelievable accomplishment. The always, and this can be a challenge, because you're a very upbeat person. All the things, you treat others with respect. You do everything a person should do. Yet you had to deal with this. With your personal journey, I mean, was that a hard thing for you to tell and be able to intimate to a world audience in this type of documentary?
I think that's a good question. I think in 2008, 2009, I would say it would definitely be a struggle to share that I was in severe depression to the point of contemplating suicide. But after 2010, that was something that I was wanting to share, because it was something that I was able to go through. It was not great at the time. It sucked, to be honest. But you come out of something like that and you're able to help others who are dealing something like that. But I think maybe to go back a little bit, Alan, when I started to pursue the Olympic journey, I was 7 years old. And that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so my main drive and main goal was to be at the Olympic Games. Didn't know what sport that would be, but I found myself at my first games in 2008. And I think one of the biggest things that helped, not helped,
Yeah.
that fostered my depression was the fact that I was putting everything that I hoped for in the Olympic Games. And I came out of the 2008 Olympic Games broken. I didn't accomplish everything that I wanted to. And so it was like somebody swept the rug underneath my feet, and I was kind of directionless. Didn't know what my purpose was. And so that led to the point of just severe depression.
Yeah, and you have that, on the surface, we look at a David Boudia in 2008 and say, oh, unbelievable that you make those accomplishments and how great it is just to be there. But when you're an elite athlete, which is hard for me to relate to, it does come down to that one moment, and being able to reconcile that is got to be one of the hardest things in life to do, let alone sport.
Right. I mean, it's exactly what you said. You put your eggs in one basket and you are going down this journey and hoping that this one particular moment in your life is going to one define you, and then
Yeah.
also at the same time giving you all the fulfillment and hope that you would ever want. So from 7 years old to 19 years old, everything that I did was motivated to my happiness and success at my first Olympic Games. And after the Olympics were finished in Beijing, I found the exact opposite. And so I felt alone, even though I was kind of riding on the success and the popularity that I got from my first Olympic Games, but you feel isolated.
Yeah.
So it's essentially 2020 was all about isolation. And so it doesn't surprise me that when you're alone in your struggles in a lockdown situation like 2020 was, there that depression rate, suicide rate is going up because of it.
Yeah, I thought that's one reason why this documentary was so critical. And again, I didn't happen on it till December of 2020. I wish I would have in July 2020, just because it's so important and such an important message. And Michael Phelps, Sasha Cohen, Lolo Jones, and these are all, the highest of the high, as you are, and they talk all about, exactly what you said, feeling alone, feeling like they in some ways have failed themselves or failed at something. Now that it's come out, have you, in these, maybe some of these folks have been friends of yours, but have you formed any additional bond with this group, or stay connected just because of the documentary?
I mean, I think leading up to the release of it, there was communication with them, and I think the biggest thing when we all watched it,
Yeah.
it was probably 6 months before it was released, is Brett Ripken, who was in charge of putting the documentary together, wanted our opinion on, is this telling the right story
Yeah.
of the struggle of an elite athlete? And I think every single one of us said it was fantastically done. It's not an easy watch.
No, no, no.
You don't walk away from the documentary like, okay, that's awesome, let's go do XYZ.
Yeah.
I think it exposes the fact that I think it's super helpful for a young parent whose kids are in sports to know exactly the potential danger, and to help encourage them through the process, that it's not all about this destination that you're trying to get to value what I've been saying since 2012, the journey that you're on.
Yeah, I think that is true. It is not an easy watch, and it takes a turn that surprised me. I'm a pretty good Olympic quote unquote historian. I certainly had heard of many of these folks, but again, and whether it's bobsledding, whether it's diving, whether it's swimming, whether it's skating, it's interesting, the common bond and very much the common thread of really, in some ways, really having to manage the fact that you're on the precipice of great glory and disaster all at the same time. And, you really never, in some ways, you have to really work to say you're good enough, even though you're the greatest. I mean, that's just an
Yeah.
amazing dichotomy.
Yeah, and I think Lolo Jones actually put it perfectly. It was either that or oh goodness, I forget, but it was said like it's like a conveyor belt
Yeah.
where you have these athletes going through and you're training and you have to be the best at that certain time. But once you say you're done, they drop you and they're on to the next new hot fad. And that's exactly what Olympic athletes go through. So it's almost like you're building these relationships over your extended athletic career that's not normal, through your 20s, and then all of a sudden the Olympics are over and that's it. And so I think a lot of these athletes who are struggling with depression and thoughts of suicide are contemplating that because they're it at that particular moment. But once it's gone, you're kind of looking around like, I just invested 20 years of my life for
Yeah.
this moment,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yeah.
And so that, again, I just go back to the word, you're left hopeless.
Yeah.
And so we have to find hope in something. Thankfully, my faith, that was the depression in that stage of my life is kind of what introduced me to my faith. So before 2009, I had a little bit of a background in religion, but it wasn't until I wrestled with this weighty topic that I found my faith.
Yeah. Lolo Jones, yeah, she talked about just the whole notion that she was still, even after her Olympic experience, still serving as a bartender, and yet it's a fine line because no one, and I think everyone talked about, at least that I saw, you guys all understand that you've had a great experience. It's not like it's a woe is me. That's not the message here. It is a fine line though, because people say, well, gosh, David's been to Rio and he's been to London and he's been to Beijing. How could I feel sorry for him? But you're not asking, it's a key distinction. You're not asking for people to feel sorry. You're asking for them to understand.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I don't think any one of us went on that documentary and was like, I hope I go on there and get sympathy from people.
Yeah.
That is the exact opposite. I think, the reason why I wanted to be a part of it was exactly what I said earlier, Alan,
Yeah.
where if there's a young athlete just hoping to go to the Olympic Games or be a collegiate athlete at a major university or the NBA or whatever it is, I think there's value in making sure that there's vulnerability and people around you that you're talking to. And it wasn't until 2009 where I had a close knit circle that I could share this with, and
Yeah.
come to find out the struggles that I was struggling with, I wasn't alone in. There were people
Yeah.
out there. And so I think when you think something like a mental health, you're like, something's wrong with me. And
Yeah.
everyone else doesn't struggle with this. And so again, you feel alone. And I think that was probably one of the biggest messages I wanted to help send out, is that you can be hopeless when you put your focus on this one certain destination, but there's hope when it's a different purpose.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And when you look at it, it is the finest of fine lines. I mean, when you talk about being as good as David Boudia is and spending all that time, that's the only way that I know that I can think of to get there. You can't get to the level that you're going to get to in diving without spending that time.
Right.
But there is always a cost, and that is, when you reconcile that, you've talked a little bit about what your message would be to kids, but how you reconcile that, boy, it is all there, but there is a cost to doing all this and a price to pay.
Yeah, there is. I think now, coming out of it after 2009, I was able to answer the questions of why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I going? And before that, it was, I don't know. I guess I'm here to dive, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it was purposeless. I had no purpose in why I was doing the things that I was doing. And so I think that was, along with this documentary, I also have a book out called Greater Than Gold. And
Right.
I think the title of that book explains what my message would be for kids, that there is something greater than a gold medal. And for me personally, that is my faith.
Yeah.
I think the freedom that I found after being introduced to a relationship with Christ and a community of people who know and understand the deceptiveness of their own hearts. It sounds weird, but there's freedom and closeness in that.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. You are now the two of you proud parents of 3 children, right? And in this maybe not quite time for that message for them, but they're, you've certainly talked about how you would counsel them, but how will you reconcile with your own kids in terms of the efforts you put into this and that story that you'll tell them, and maybe how soon your kids I don't think are old enough yet, maybe not, but tell me about proper timeframes, at least in your professional experience, to understand when's the right time to get that message out to prospective kids or prospective elite athletes.
Right. I mean, we have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old who is able to communicate. And so whether it's the Olympic Games and pursuing that or pursuing the toy that she wants, it's the same root cause. They want what their heart is wanting in that certain situation. So I'm going to steal it from you and it's going to be mine. And so they're still cultivating that kind of heart, if that makes sense. And so you can use little teaching moments like that to expose them to what you're wanting right now is only what Coda wants. You're not thinking about anybody else, but I just threw my daughter under the bus.
That's all right.
But thinking about only what she wants. And so I think exposing them to that hard truth at that young age, of course, it's met with love and grace and gentleness, but they're able to start to understand that whatever they're pursuing, it's either going to lead down a path of destruction or down a path of righteousness, of good stuff. And so they can already see the 2 clear paths at a young age.
I'm going to bet you guys are going to do a very good job in doing that. I can sense that already. The fine line, obviously sports psychology has infiltrated. Purdue's got in 2 full-time, Brad Fultz and Kelsey Dawson, but others that have been involved with it. There's a fine line there also at the collegiate level of trying to improve performance, help somebody get, if they're in golf, they got the yips when putting, can they focus and figure that out? But there's also that need, and interestingly, of, again, dealing with the same issues you're talking about: depression, not being good enough, failing their teammates or their families, or their feeling that they do that. Again, how do you reconcile that? What needs to have the most weight, or is it just a situational thing to be able to figure that out for the best for collegiate student athletes?
What a hard topic that I think you can go on hours and hours about. I think from personal experience, sports psychologists, they're fantastic in helping you understand the mental game of the sport. I think I was able to be successful not because of the talent that I had, but because of the control of my mental capacity during a high pressure situation. Outside of that, there wasn't much besides the mental and a sports psychologist. Now that could change for sure. And I think having conversations like this and seeing documentaries like that, knowing that this is a common struggle in college athletics or professional athletics, I think that was probably one of the goals that Michael had, was to start a conversation on this topic. But it gets difficult. I mean, that's great that we have 2 full-time sports psychologists at Purdue. We have hundreds of athletes at Purdue. And so how do you balance that where you're trying to help them improve mentally, but also at the same time, should there be a responsibility or obligation to help them outside of the pool? And I think that's one of the things that Adam Soldati, that's why he's one of the best coaches in Purdue history, because he invests in their athlete in the pool and he invests in the athlete outside of the pool. And so he cares about David as diver, champion, but more importantly, he cares about David's character outside of the pool and how he is handling difficult situations. And so if that answers your question, I think it's, again, it takes a team effort. It shouldn't lie everything on the sports psychologist, but on coaches and staff and supporting staff.
I think it answers it well. And if you ask, we've had Brad and Kelsey on our show, and they say exactly that. They're getting far more questions about, it seems, or as many questions about depression issues and challenges in their personal lives as they are about performance-related issues. And I think that in itself can't, if we don't overwhelm the two of them or those that are involved, that is a good thing. From that standpoint. All right, now I can't have you on the show and not ask about how training is going. Obviously, Tokyo 2021 is in your sights. How is it going for right now? And I think seems to me that it's pretty clear that now that we figured out how to do sporting events without fans, that the Olympics will come off. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic. I don't know, but tell me where you are right now and how you feel heading into 2021.
Yeah, that one makes me scratch my head still, Alan, where a lot of the sporting events, it's, 10 on 10 with some support staff. The Olympic Games is just a totally different beast where you're having tens and thousands of countries coming in and staying in an Olympic Village. And so logistically, making a decision like that, I want nothing to do with.
Yeah, I hear you.
And honestly, I think there's contentment on both sides. If it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen, and you move on. And if it does, then you continue to do what your goals are to be. But it doesn't change what our job is here at the pool. We're training hard and trying to get done what we want to get done inside of the pool. I had a hiccup in September where I had my first surgery ever. And it's taken me this long to now just get back to the pool. So getting back in shape and now trying to retrain my body. But I'm confident 5 months from now at the Olympic trials in June in Indianapolis that we can get the job done. But again, that outside adversity has to at one point be blocked out and put your head down to get the job done.
The 31-year-old David Boudia, is that, even though that the body may not be quite the same, but do you view that as an overall advantage versus the 19-year-old David Boudia in terms of dealing with that type of adversity? I mean, is that a net positive for you? Would you trade, and this is an impossible question, but do you trade one for the other here in this deal? Because you at least, you have that perspective and experience.
I would take the experience over the physical ability any day of the week. Because when I came back after 2016, I took about a year and a half off. I didn't have to learn how to compete. I was in hundreds of competitions. That wasn't a factor. It was learning how to dive again. And I think it was my experience that helped keep me through that. So I think it's a good question, but that 19-year-old athleticism, I can push that to the side and just go on my experience more.
All right, I'll take you at your word. I think you're spot on that, and then some. All right, we have run out of time. Now we do something on Golden Black called a birthday Zoom, and I think your birthday is April 24th. So I'm going to peg you again if you've got time. We'll get a little more of update of where you are in your training if we can do that around that time. But we really grateful for your time here and your expertise. And this subject, we will continue with this subject because it's personally one that is very important to me and one that I don't pretend to understand, but I want to and need to. And I think your message is extremely important to many, many people listening and viewing out there. So we wish you well. And good luck in the training and getting back at the pool. And we thank you for your time today. We also want to thank our sponsors, WLFI, but also Triple X, who David knows a lot about. Triple X Family Restaurants. He's, I think, been on both of the commercials so far today. State Farm agent Trent Johnson and Hilton Garden. And also, thanks so much to the folks at WLFI, Gordon and Scott, for putting this together. We appreciate it very much. Have a great rest of the weekend, all, and we'll look forward to next week's show on Golden Black Live.